This episode of the Coarse Grind Podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of Espy. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
Hey, this is Chef Rodney Leinhardt from Deliciously Dope TV, and you're listening to the Coarse Grind Podcast with Sean Rossler.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It has certainly been a while, hasn't it? Episode number 204 of the Coarse Grind Podcast with you as always, but not for a while this evening. Host creator Sean Rossler, how is everyone doing? You know, it has been a while, hasn't it? No small window of time by any account, and suffice it to say, it was time well spent. Those of you closer to the show than just listenership are well aware, but ultimately and in short form, when you go through as much as our family has, as of the past 2 years, something's got to give. And it was this show. It was one of the pieces I could put down and still be dad, husband, son, son-in-law, all the roles that matter most. And many times I thought about hanging this up, I'm not going to lie. But a lot of people, a lot of good people around me continued to remind me how much there was left to do, how much there was left to tell. And as my dad would never leave a job undone, well, writing was on the wall, me neither. So here it is, triumphant comeback, and I thought long and hard about just who could carry such a torch. And guest after guest didn't happen, I'll admit. Some just didn't work, some just didn't happen. But then fate, beautiful as it is, brought tonight's guest into my sphere, connecting even more dots in my attempt to carry on a certain icon's legacy, story, and effort. And the rest, as they say, is history. Tonight's guest is a Russian television personality and producer. He was educated at Moscow State Pedagogical University, where he studied English and taught the language in Moscow from 83 to 88. But though you might think it's the common thread of us both being English teachers that brought us together, you couldn't be farther from the truth. See, our guest is best known as the traveling companion of a little-known American chef on his Travel Channel TV show No Reservations. I'm talking, of course, about none other than Anthony Bourdain. Our guest first met Bourdain in 2002 when he was hired as a guide for the St. Petersburg, Russia episode of A Cook's Tour. He would appear in one more episode of that series, 7 episodes of No Reservations, and 2 episodes of Parts Unknown, the last in 2016. Bourdain called tonight's guest an international man of mystery, and his affable personality made him something of a folk hero among fans of Bourdain's show. To have such an immeasurably knowledgeable piece of the puzzle not only provide more insight into the life and time of Uncle Tony, but to also give me the well-needed push I needed to return to the mic is well beyond coincidence, and yet here we are. So let's do this shit. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, ushering in the return of the Coarse Grind Podcast, none other than one of Russia's greatest national treasures, television personality and producer, and dear comrade to our Uncle Tony, the Zamir Gotta. How are you, sir?
Well, Sean, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. I hope I will live up to your and your audience expectations.
You deserve you deserve nothing less than that. I was absolutely thrilled when our spheres intertwined and overlapped, and here we are, and it's amazing. And I cannot wait to learn, to personally learn so much more about you and to share your story out and amongst the masses. But before we do, a little intro to the program. I know it's been almost a year, so that's on me. Starters, mains, and afters are the 3 sessions of the interview. Starters, we talk about the guest in question, where they came from, their origin story, if you will. Mains, we're going to talk about what it is they're doing now, what makes them tick. And finally, afters, a little bit more fun, a little bit more irreverent and off the cuff. And no one's been injured in 203 episodes, so I don't see it happening tonight either. So without further ado, Zamir, tell us all about where and what you grew up eating.
Perfect. So let me start with a little bit of catching question in a way, more provocative than most of your guests would ask the host. Sean, you have to be honest with me. Are you hungry and thirsty for more?
I am always hungry and thirsty for more, man.
Good.
Always.
That's very inspiring. So now I think I could, roll and give you more than you probably expect. And so not to bore everyone with just statistics, I will be pretty short, and then you will figure out what parts of my childhood in the Soviet Union, if you remember, one of American presidents called the empire of evil. So I was born right in the capital, the city of Moscow, in 1956, the prime of stagnation in the Soviet Union, and the probably the beginning of the Cold War between the West and the East. And I was born in a rank-and-file family, so my father worked at the TV and radio producing plant. My mom was a teacher of German language, which helped me at that early stage to understand the importance of learning foreign languages, and she gave me quite a push with English. And definitely when I was growing up behind the Iron Curtain, the music from Beatles, Rolling Stones was considered as taboo because it was all tagged as a Western propaganda to kind of make an impact on the young communist league of the communist building generation, where I was growing up into that spirit. And probably by the age of 10, when my late brother, elder brother Michael, who was 9 years older than myself, managed to be very proactive in black market, and thank God he wasn't, arrested for too long. It was just a couple of conflict of interest with the Soviet police when he was exchanging the, bottle of Russian vodka for pair of jeans, or maybe a new album from, Beatles, Rolling Stones, whatever was brought by foreign tourists or diplomats in the country. So thanks to him and his older generation of black marketeers, I was already exposed to Western music. And definitely, when you listen to something which you like, but you don't really understand, that's a good motivation to start learning a foreign language. So that explains a lot that apart from my mom's efforts as a school teacher, I was under the influence of quite a new twist in my life, thanks to my brother and his friends, etc. So anyway, English became kind of an obsession for me. I think I was 15 when it was probably 1971, when someone as a black marketeer exposed me to Jesus Christ Superstar, that rock opera, and I loved the music. I loved the whole package of lyrics, the way they fit into that music, especially in the background of another taboo topic, as you probably understand. In the Soviet Union, communism was imposed as the only religion to kind of embrace the masses and the younger generation in the spirit of building communism, the society which was meant to be sold to us as the congregation under the Communist Party leaders, who would believe in a kind of an interesting dream that you don't really need to work that hard, because regardless of how much you contribute to the society, everyone will get equal share of the total gross GDP, like the mass product produced by the country. So basically they didn't really simulate the people to work too hard. The whole idea was, if you are part of the work collective, that's how the responsibility is shared, right? No one really cares whether 5 people are top achievers or 20 are not. It just the whole idea was to deliver the goods, and no matter how good you do it, at the end of the day, everyone will be assigned to equal share of the joint production. Does it make some sense? Does it remind you anything?
It certainly does. It certainly does. And it honestly takes me back to civics class in high school and learning about this. And instantly I thought, when you were talking about religion, Karl Marx's famous quip, "Religion is the opiate of the masses." And it's so intriguing for me to sit here and hear somebody who lived it. That's the amazing part for me, to be the interviewer and to hear this firsthand, that you actually, this wasn't just some facade. I think it's easy through the lens of a camera to almost feel it fictitious to a degree, but to hear it and to know it's real. And yeah, of course it is, but to hear you say it and talk about it is just incredible. Just an incredible background, and what early inspiration to create such a figure who has like one toe in each body of water, figuratively speaking, the Russian and American, to hook up with her dear Uncle Tony. Like it's almost like it was foretold.
Sean,
yes, sir.
You're reading my mind. Basically, that was an introduction to explain better to you and the audience why Anthony Bourdain, who was kind of dreaming about the unknown world of something different from the capitalism, which he started to hate at a certain period of his time. Now, as ex-junkie, ex-alcoholic, the man who was more nihilist than anyone I've met in my life.
Yes.
So that probably explained quite a connection to like a spark, because the guy came from absolute different universe, right?
Yes.
Born in a family who could afford bringing him to, foreign trips when he was 7, 8,
Yep.
eat like lobster or whatever. Whereas I, in the same age, was probably lining up for a piece of bread without even asking if they have anything else outside of that basic needs, like bread and a piece of sausage if I'm lucky, because it was on ratio card in the time I was, raised in capital of the former Soviet Union. And by the way, it's hard to believe that the toilet paper as a phenomenon, right, as a product, was developed in the Soviet Union only, I think, when I was 8 or 10. And by that age, all of us Soviet citizens used to use the yesterday's newspaper Pravda, the most popular communist newspaper. If at that time somebody would learn that, my parents would be sent to Gulag, but now at least I can easily speak about it.
That's true. That's true. You mentioned something, and I want to go back to this just from the food angle. You mentioned the, I believe it was ration card. Talk to me a little bit about what meals and sustenance looked like for you growing up.
Oh, okay. So I'm not sure whether it's the upside or a downside, but when I was, like, from what I recall, age like 5 to 12 probably, I was not a big eater, and it took my mom quite, a lot of patience and perseverance to feed anything into me. I was like as thin as probably Tony was at that age, and he basically preserved his body structure, whereas I just definitely put on some weight after I turned 23. Probably ladies made such an impact into my growing up, and I don't know what else, so I kind of put on some weight after I started my 20s. But at that early age, so the basic food which was available in the stores, if you're lucky to be at the right time at the right place, because there was not enough, not just consumer goods. I mean, forget about some, foreign-made jeans or anything like that. That was always in big demand, because the Soviet planned economy was primarily meant to produce, military weapons, some kind of industrial products, because that was the global way of Soviet Union trying to catch up with the rotting West, as they called U.S. and other Western countries, and sort of catch up with that economic growth, which didn't happen. And that was one of the reasons why Soviet Union finally collapsed, because that, Cold War and the arms race, brought them to a economic default. But anyway, on a family basis, my mission as a young man, kid, basically aged 7 to 12. So my main job was after school, let's say after 3 p.m., to go to the nearest bakery and wait maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour for a fresh delivery of bread. So if you're lucky to be there between, let's say, 3 to 5, you have a chance to buy like 2 loaves of bread. It was all of the products primarily were rationed, which means I don't remember that I needed ratio cards for this, but for some products like sugar, which was not enough, and salt and matches, you were kind of having a ratio card. Like the family was assigned to X amount of, boxes or kilos in whatever, capacity you will buy it. And as I mentioned before, I wasn't a big eater, so it was easier for my family.
Sure.
My brother was always on the run. He was like, since he turned 14, I don't remember him being at home. He had already first love affairs, black market business, and some other opportunities like to make his own living.
Yeah.
So parents and myself were basically kind of catering for 3 of us. So from what I recall, my most favorite thing was bologna, like sausage, and it was very, very much in demand, which means people were waiting for it online for several hours. So if you're lucky to be there in the food store when the new delivery limited is brought in, you were allowed to buy half a pound per person.
Wow. Per person per household, or per person
in
there?
Most families, when mom and kids, are available and not working till 6, because there will be probably nothing left by the time the working day is over. Like my mom, as a teacher, she would be done probably by 3 p.m. So she would take me, and we were allowed definitely to buy, let's say, a pound, because 2 people were buying. Gotcha. So everything was kind of limited. So from this standpoint, I remember that sausages, just, like frankfurters, whatever you call, were my favorites. So since we couldn't buy a lot, like to keep in the fridge for a week, it was probably enough just for me alone to eat within 2 days. And then mom could hardly find anything else to substantially give me some vitamins. I don't know. I didn't like porridges. I didn't like cereal. I didn't like soup. So it was tough for her. But anyway, if she was lucky to buy, let's say, not a farmer style chicken, because she couldn't afford to go to a farmer's market. Definitely we had some farmer's market, but it was kind of too expensive for an average income family. So if she manages to get an old looking chicken and do a soup and maybe something else as piece of leg or whatever to keep me eating, that would be probably another option for her to be satisfied with picking me on the kind of food consumption. Wow. So anyway, from what I recall in my childhood, I spent quite some time in the food stores waiting for different foods to be available and be like the number one food delivery for the family, because parents worked.
It's so amazing to hear that and contrast it with how at least I came to know you through the lens of television. And again, it's so interesting to have discovered that you were both a producer and a personality on TV prior. I'm wondering, what was it? What was it that drew you to? It's not even just food, but I really feel like you were attracted by just the socialization of breaking bread together, and breaking bread, of course, being figurative. And tell me a little bit about what drew you to that. Why is that so important to you?
Well, so let me give you a fast forward, right?
Sure.
So after the graduation of school, my mom advised that, with her career and her sisters, my aunts, all of them were teachers. My aunt in Uzbekistan, she married an Uzbek guy, was teaching English. The other one was teaching physics. So that kind of profession, I think, had quite an impact on me, right, as a family tradition. So my mom kind of advised, and I agreed, to enter the teachers training college to master English and German as foreign languages. So thanks to that, and another luck which I had after, being successfully coming to the fourth year. Normally it was a 5-year course, like to get a major. I was sent to Iraq as an intern. That's very important to explain my kind of fast transformation from a kind of a guy disillusioned with propaganda and all that Soviet dogmas, like, the West is rotting because they have, the gays, they have the, drugs, they don't make love, they have sex because it is for money. So all this kind of bullshit was imposed on everyone, and I was not an exception. But until my first trip abroad, that's why it's important, and thanks to my, successful career as a student and being like a top 10 of 100 people classes in this college, we, 5 of us, were selected to be sent as interns to developing countries. If you remember that it was like early 80s, the Soviet Union was very proactive, actually, which is happening now again in Africa, in developing countries in Latin America, in Asia, helping them build the socialism or whatever else they were kind of selling them as another dream. So I ended up in Iraq, which was a pretty prosperous developing country under Saddam Hussein, to give devil his due. And I ended up in the north of Iraq, which now everybody knows. The part is called Kurdistan. And probably not everyone knows that Kurds speak Farsi. They are not Arabs. They are more like Iranians, like from that totally different culture. But all of them were Muslims, right? So basically Iraqis who operated the power station, hydropower station, built by the Soviet Union and Yugoslav contractors. And after the 5 years of the construction work completion in 1980, the station started to operate, providing electricity to basically the whole northern Iraq. And that's where I ended up for first. Originally, I was sent for 1 year internship before I graduated from my college. And that was interesting time. My first shopping is something I need to explain in more detail. After, as you understand, lack of everything in the Soviet Union, forget about the toilet paper. With the first money I was paid in local Iraqi dinars, which were very strong currency. I was paid as a student 80 dinars, which was corresponding to $240 at that exchange rate. So once I was introduced by my fellow colleague who's been there already for a couple of years and said, Zamir, there'll be a cultural shock. You're like in the middle of nowhere. It's like basically people don't speak much English. It's like very tough Orthodox Muslim community. But once you get to that store, like on a hill or somewhere, like probably a horse could bring you up there unless you are like physically fit to come up to that, hill, you would see the goods from all over the world. So you can imagine that 23-year-old young Zamir, who was fascinated by Western music by that time, and my brother, who happened to be a sailor on the Danube River by the time I was sent to Iraq, Michael, he would send me the first jeans from his business trips to Yugoslavia, Austria, and other, Danube countries. So I was already kind of semi-ready for the foreign shopping. But in Kurdistan, like in the middle of nowhere, where there's not definitely civilized Western community, you find everything you could only dream of in the capital of the former Soviet Union. Fruits, vegetables, fresh ones, not frozen.
Yep.
Ham, meat, fresh, you name it. So that's probably was the first time when I started looking at food as a consumer, when my appetite started to wake up maybe later than never, and I started, getting interested in the real cheese from France, because in the Soviet Union, whatever they call cheese, I realized it had nothing to do with real cheese. So in other words, I really understood. Maybe that explains now. I'm realizing that's why maybe I didn't really like that food that much, because it was made of some chemical solutions or something.
It wasn't necessarily the real food that you were getting.
Maybe. So from this standpoint, that was the first time being outside of the Soviet Union when I started realizing that life is definitely worth it if you speak English, if you pay, enough and you can afford it. They would say, Zamir, you're lucky as a student. You are paid as the minister of whatever in the former Soviet Union, which means that you are privileged to be abroad and represent your country. So you don't have to commit any bad stuff. So people looking at you, the locals, would say, oh, the Soviets are really pretty bad guys. You really need to represent country in the best way. Like, don't swear, don't use the, bad language.
Sure.
Don't drink, don't fuck around, excuse my French.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah,
and
you should be like the icon of mature communism, so that Iraqis maybe would follow us.
Right.
So they definitely have a much higher standard of living, as I realized, on a human habit, meaning that the people would get about the same amount of money in Iraq. They were pretty well, do compared to the Soviets, honestly. And I didn't expect them to become communists or socialists, because they were more developing capitalism, from what I understood, like real, marketing economy.
Yeah.
They sell oil. They had all foreigners, waiting in line to provide services for them and build and construct and whatnot. So anyway, then I started to question more and more that the Soviet dogmas I was impregnated with the, milk from my mom, that something is not cooking right. Like, you can't be part of the work collective and expect everyone to contribute evenly and get, at the end of the day, like the fair amount of what you deliver. And if you are better delivery than anybody else, nobody cares about it. It's just like the collective. So since that time, I started questioning, why do we need the state playing such a big role? Why don't you, put a responsibility on your own shoulders and become more adventurous, more entrepreneurial, to create something of your own, rather than wait for the boss to tell you, Zamir, you need to do this, to push this, piece of paper from this table to another table, and at the end of the day, you are paid evenly like everybody who may work less or more. It doesn't really matter.
What I think is so interesting,
the transformation I was going through.
Yeah. To hear you tell that story, I have to step out as an American-born citizen, and to my listeners who are of the same ilk, it is absolutely intriguing to hear somebody talk about two really polarizing names, Russia and Iraq, to the United States populace, and to hear you say, and I'll paraphrase, that it was Iraq that opened your eyes to the freedoms that you could. That's amazing. That's crazy.
In other words, you can imagine the shock. I was supposed to represent a very developed industrially, the communist country, which was selling its values to the outside world. But instead, like, I started realizing that I was sold a dream which may never happen in the world. But those who don't need to bullshit and say we are like communists and we create something and we split it with everybody evenly. I saw the first consumerism and the first capitalistic way with the little traders in the middle of nowhere. As I said, Iraqis, like Kurds. They couldn't even speak any language but Kurdish, but they had access to anywhere, and they could trade in and out without any specific limitations or bullshit tags that you can sell this, you cannot buy that. Yeah. I found I won't lie, I couldn't buy, definitely at that age that was important because there were no women basically left after the Soviet Union completed that construction, so we were just mostly men. And as you know, in a Muslim country, you could not even look at the women because their faces are hidden and it's like a crime, etc. So anyway, the Yugoslav colleagues who were leaving the construction by the time I landed, they left with me some Penthouse and Playboy magazines, which was a taboo in the Soviet Union. So that helped me a lot, not only to practice English, but maybe to jerk off at some point when I was in a distress or some kind of, bad thing. So you can imagine Tony listening to the stories of how
capitalism,
the Soviet Union, and then he started looking at himself, like he said, Zamir, now I said that I'm like a real capitalist brat, I was eating seafood when I was 8, when you were lining up for a piece of toilet paper shit or something, So that was a great connection. So like we met on the moon, right? You remember at that time, the USSR, the Soviets were competing who lands at the moon first, and then all of a sudden we realized that we were coming from totally different universes, but he and me shared the goodwill, the peace-sharing mission. He had it through food, and I was more on the vodka front, which was a good connection, regardless.
Well, and speaking of that, and I want to get to the origin story where you came on as the guide for the St. Petersburg episode, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I do want to take a moment and sidebar just to kind of break in, and we'll talk more about it later for sure. But you are a very busy dude lately, and one of the things you've been working on is this Peacemaker vodka. You gave me a quick lesson in Russian, like I already feel smarter, thank you, in that your name, Zamir, I believe was Peace Springer?
Well, actually, word for word, the full name is actually Yazamir, which means I am for peace, but to be more like modest than my parents wanted me to be, I decided to, first of all, to cut it to a shorter name, Zamir. It's easier to pronounce for foreigners, which means for peace, like word for word, for peace. So basically now you're talking to Messiah, because at a certain age in my life, when parents sadly, passed away, I started thinking, wow, probably it was not accidental that they decided to give me, it was kind of a fashion in the 50s to give different slogans, like Soviet time slogans, like Lenin, like abbreviation for Karl, Lenin, and whatever. So anyway, I was given this name, which I realized it could be a mission at a certain point in my life. Basically, that's when the times with Tony came into fruition. And he said, Zamir, I really believe that when you open a bottle of vodka, you don't want your new comrades get shit-faced. It's not your point. It's just you use it as a conversation starter for making toasts. In Russia, we don't drink just for the sake of drinking. Every toast is meaningful with a message. To friends, to parents, to love, to peace. So that's how he, believe me or not, started to adopt some of it. And then some episodes, if you look back at No Reservations, he even started toasting.
I love it. I love it because I too feel, and I'm more maybe from the Irish side of things, to lift a glass, sláinte, here's to the folks at the back of the bar, here's to the folks in the middle, cheers like that. But I completely agree with like such a custom. It doesn't have to be, to your point about, getting shit-faced, the drinking, that like it's almost about a tradition. Like, look, if you are of the Christian persuasion, right? Once a month, what do? They raise the cup, you take a sip, It's tradition. And it brings people together. And I feel like, a vodka, a wine, or something over dinner is no different. And I remember some of the earlier episodes watching you and Tony interact, and there was such a warmth and familiarity that, like, you don't even see written into shows, and it was natural for you two. And so to now know that you're taking this legacy, this very, and again, folks, listen, it's not about the drinking per se, but the vodka was this cornerstone of the toast. And so you came out with Peacemaker Vodka, which, folks, look it up. It's out there. I'll pull up the URL here in a minute. What inspired you to do that, Zamir?
You won't be surprised, Tony.
Of course.
A little bit like back forward. So flashbacks. He was thinking, well, not just thinking, it was coming to basically 75% of the project was done to open his food court in Pier 57 in Manhattan, New York, around 2014-16, I think. Okay. And just as a fun conversation in the episode of Georgia, you could see it on CNN, in the ex-Soviet Republic, not in the U.S. state. He said, Zamir, probably it was off record, I don't recall, maybe after the dinner scene was over and we got some booze, and definitely it was more like relaxed, loose tongue conversation. He said, Zamir, I would be interested if you come up with your own vodka brand. He knew that I drink only vodka, ideally Russian made or Ukrainian made at that time. We were friends and and then, if it proves good quality, I would be interested, I'm quoting, to put it on the top shelf at this food court in Manhattan. I thought it was a joke, but the next morning, the show continued. I said, Tony, were you serious? Yes. I said, yeah, sure. So it took me some time to explore the Western New York area, because I ended up in Buffalo. Thanks to Anthony, in 2009, he brought me into U.S. to show me his backyard after I took him for 5-6 episodes in the former Soviet Union and Romania. And in Buffalo, I got connected and made friends with people in hospitality, who definitely, adored Tony and were very open-minded to my craziness about trying to find a good source of wheat, just to educate everyone. I'm about enlightenment about, Zamir, who used to teach English. Now I'm like doing some sort of more of a philosophical messiah kind of Mahatma Gandhi style, peace advocates.
I love it.
To cut a long story short, with the help of my spiritual advisor, I need to give him credit, Chris Carson of Swedish descent, an amazing connoisseur of booze, and he has his own online magazine called Spirits Review. So with Chris's help, and we, trust me, we traveled a lot in the whole Western New York area. We did find a farmer with amazing winter crop wheat. And accidentally, not far from the farmer, very recently, it was like a alignment of stars, young people, like 30, 35-year-olds, 3 partners, opened up this small distillery. It was called Honey Oy Falls. It's like Indian name. It's hard to pronounce for me at this late hour. I'm sorry. So anyway, it was like a lucky marriage. The guys needed someone with a little bit of understanding what we wanted to do. So we needed just, good source of water and a great source of winter crop wheat, which we found. So the first batch was very limited, 3,000 bottles. And Tony loved that sample. And he said, okay, let me wait that the project will be finally launched, as it was his original plan. So sadly for me, I don't know exactly what happened, but his food court wasn't launched, and I ended up with 3,000 bottles, which I started to distribute basically as hand-sell product in 3-4 different states: Texas, Michigan, New York, and one sec, and just it will come back. So it was 4 states we managed to get that first batch distribution, which was not easy, trust me. But
no, I'm sure.
I did break the ice and the bread with many people in Texas, in Detroit area, in Buffalo, Rochester, mostly like west of New York.
Well, yeah, Detroit area, then you would have been in Michigan, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It was Lansing, the
there
place where we had our first vodka tasting event, 2016, I guess. Yeah.
Love it. So, I mean, that's the story of the vodka. And the vodka's making its rounds, and we'll get back more to that in just a minute because there's a tour, there's a documentary. I want to talk about those things. But I want to take it back to St. Petersburg. Here you are, tour guide. Get hired by this guy. Tell me.
No, not exactly. I was like field producer / fixer.
Okay.
Is an easier term for Americans.
Yes.
And actually, believe me or not, by that time, it was 2001. You have to make a correction in Wikipedia, not 2002. It was the Cook's Tour for Food Network. Not too many people remember that. That's when Tony started his amazing TV anchoring career. So from this standpoint, it was 2001, and he really wanted to understand more about Russian recipes of kulibaka, that fish pie, which he loved.
Yep.
The recipe from his comrade in crime he met at the American culinary school, and that was his main motivation, apart from mystery, James Bond, spies, and this whole mystery of the Soviet Union and New Russia. That was the reason for him to come over. So basically, by the time he came over, I was already for 10 years in that international film production, working with the people like Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Ted Koppel,
wow, okay.
News. So by that time, I was already established guy in producing and co-producing and being field producer for feature and documentaries. I can't miss the opportunity to mention, which is still a big, matter of pride, to be part of the international feature production, the film called Orlando, based on Virginia Woolf's story. Mm-hmm. That explains my connection to Uzbekistan, where my late cousin Ahror, film director, who brought me actually to the film set when I was only 8 and 9, when he was in Moscow Film Academy. So we helped my new friend at that time, Chris Shepard from London film production company, find the locations to substitute Constantinople, which was an original Virginia Woolf script, for Uzbekistan, desert-looking location for one of the important scenes when Orlando, played by Tilda Swinton, someone who was living for 250 years, half of the life as a male and the second part as a female. That was an important scene when a male was appearing as a female in a Muslim country. That's another chapter in my book. We'll get back to that. So that's just enough for you that by the time Tony landed as a newcomer in this industry, very insecure, very shy on camera. So after the first dinner, he said, Zamir, I actually need you more in front of the camera, not like with the setups with the Russian crew or locations or scouting or whatever. So I basically had to function in two roles once we met, to be in front of the camera with him, helping him communicate with the people who didn't speak Russian, and being responsible for access, locations, Russian crew, and everything else.
Amazing. And so you meet him. Was it chemistry right off the bat, or did it take some warming up?
The love from the first sight. I know normally you won't about men, but it was like a spark. We connected like from the moment I met them at the airport, and he really looked like a hippie. For me, I actually had some doubts whether I need to be, involved in this production of someone who's never done it before. It was just mutual friends in New York who helped them find me as a local fixer, because someone whom they expected first disappeared, which happened in Russia more often than less, because the money wasn't good enough. Honestly, by the time I was quite an established man in that industry, and normally now we stayed at good hotels. We didn't have any problems with the budget. But when Chris Collins, who actually became part of Tony in 0.0 production later on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Zamir, honestly, we don't have enough of the hotels. We'll need to ask you to rent apartments. That was the first time in my life, in my, producer's life, so to say. And I was questioning whether I should do it. It was like freezing cold, winter. But then all of a sudden, maybe it was like, I would say, finger of fate. I said, you know what? I love St. Petersburg. I'm not sure about the guy being like a chef for 25 years. He'll be an interesting person to work with, but why don't I help them? Because that's what I love to do in St. Petersburg, is my favorite city actually in Russia. So that's how I finally, managed to be part of their production.
Unreal. And so, you meet him. You're part of this production. And I want to get back to the book more in a minute. Fixer and the Chef, right?
Yes.
But help me understand, because obviously then early on versus where we really see you hit your stride, getting him massaged brutally by two very large men in a sweaty cave, which is amazing, by the way. It's one of my favorite moments of any TV show ever. And I'm so glad it was your evil streak that got him into it. So I wonder how that evolved. You mentioned before too that you were of such a disparate backgrounds, and yet you two really had a warmth. Like honestly, like your warmth with him, Repair, Jose Andres, like the top three connections that we've noted. So how did that friendship evolve?
Well, that's, the more I am looking back at that time, it's kind of hard. We landed from different universes in a similar sentiment to make that show a successful one, because he was just starting and I already had enough experience by that time to make things, professional. Mm-hmm. And that's what probably he appreciated more than anything else. But we were born in the same year. So, we were 44 when we met, right? Mm-hmm. And at that time, it's hard to make new friends. You already just kind of established in your life. You have your own network and friends, especially, with foreign, people, different mentality, different language. But there was something which probably made us connected, which was open-minded curiosity to meet new people, to share your stories, to find collaborators in your mission. So I became collaborator to help him come up with his first show, basically, right, from ground zero. Mm-hmm. Because now if you don't have interesting people you meet on the show, you can't function, right? You need someone, right, either a co-host, either interesting people to talk to. So eventually, if you watch the second Russian episode when I brought him to meet the ex-KGB colonel, Victor Cherkashin, who, for Tony, that was not just as a dream, with KGB stories, as I mentioned, James Bond, this confrontation, a lot of dirty work and how they functioned around the world. That was the world he loved, both as a reader of books and, moviegoer and a fan of, fiction and nonfiction. So that was the kind of things which connected us. We had similar interests in music, less in food for me, but then I definitely started to make up progress and becoming more of a foodie with the street food. He opened to me as a phenomenon. I was always hiding away, not thinking it's hygienic enough or not. So basically we kind of impacted each other with different background we had, which was totally different, but it helped us be part of the team, create things together and learn from each other. That's how I explained that magnetism we got.
I love it. And it was pure magnetism. It was lightning in a bottle. And now to understand too the role that you played in getting No Reservations moving. That's amazing. That's something that, again, I think we can all claim this fandom. We can all claim this obsession. But to understand what an integral role you played, how significant is that? Without Zamir, would No Reservations have even happened?
Sean, listen, Tony deserved all Emmys he got, and I had maybe a very little help as a friend, especially at the first stage of his maturing and professionally learning how to make the, images be in sync with the content, not at the expense of one instead of another, right? There's always a balance. And then with all his creativity, and that's what I was learning from him in my own documentary, we'll come to that. If your audience won't fall asleep by the time you think that that's more than enough.
They better
we were learning from each other. It's always, some people think, I'm 35, I'm 70, whatever. I don't need to learn anything. I've graduated from a college. I got the job. I know what I'm doing in life. But with Tony, more curious person I've never met intellectually, was always thinking about the history he missed on that Crimean War, which we were developing in the Ukraine episode or something else. So he was always learning, and he never hit that, Zamir, tell me this, because I missed that in certain stage of my life. So that's how we learned. He opened, Ramona's for me, some other amazing, music and films I missed from, being in the cage of the Soviet Union. Yeah. So there was always an exchange of ideas, an exchange of projects. He wanted to know more about the book packaging I was doing at that time. So that's how I actually met Victor Cherkashin and convinced him to come up with his uncensored biography, 50 years in the KGB as a spy handler. Fascinating. So in other words, that was always something we both wanted to know about each other's projects and plans, and cross-fertilization is the term I use, helped us both move basically in the same direction, creating the content.
You fed off each other, both literally and figuratively, so
exactly.
well.
With food and booze,
Yeah.
That's why I'm always anxious to check if people are hungry and thirsty. If they are not, I'm not really interested in developing anything, because it seems that they're oversaturated. The stomach and liver are in good shape, probably checked out, so there is no more room for anything else.
That's why, if I can pull the curtain back, fourth wall stuff, personal stuff here. I mean, as our mutual friend Rodney will tell you, I talked to him probably more over the past 6 months about hanging up the mic than ever before. I just did. I was at the point where I'm like, all right, is it enough? Is it too much? And I'll be honest, I've always felt, a connection to the story, to the legacy, to all that. And when you just randomly appeared in a chat with Rodney, and I went, oh my God, you're handing this one to me, Tony, aren't you? And I will text you a picture of this. I have a drawing of Tony right up above my monitor, and I looked up. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you're not letting me quit, are you? And here we have it. So that's incredible to hear. I want to talk, so we have the backstory and we know what made the magic happen. But what I don't want to do, as I think so many people do tend to do, is make it all about Tony. And granted, plenty there to be had, but Zamir has a story as well. And I want to really focus in on that, because the two things that we mentioned, we haven't touched on yet that I want to now, are three things. The book, the documentary, as well as the meet and greet series. So let's tee up with the book. When did it happen? What's the fixer and the chef?
A little bit with the book, because it's chronologically fits much more into our evolution as friends.
Sure.
Because I believe he wanted to kind of say thank you to me for that experience I shared and helped him with his own show on No Reservations eventually. So it was about 2011 or 12, bit late hours, so I could be a little bit confused with the exact year. But once we were in Dallas or Cleveland, not many people know that at certain point, Tony was having his own public appearance, North American tour called Guts and Glory. And for whatever reason, probably as I mentioned to you now, just to say thank you to me as his collaborator on the show, he invited me to be a presenter on stage for that public appearance.
Oh, so nice.
Basically, 3-minute presentation, and his producers and managers pay for my appearance and 2 shots of vodka, whatever vodka we could buy. By the way, that also explains why I said, Zamir, we need to have your own vodka, by the way, now.
That's
I
right.
remember, because we were buying whatever we could in the nearest store in that time.
Right.
So anyway, he said, Zamir, you know what, you really need to come up with your own memoirs. And they said, Tony, basically, which same question as 5 years later about the vodka, are you like kidding me? Like, what's in it about it? He said, you know what? First of all, she said, personally, I would be very much interested to understand much more than you managed to tell me about your childhood, about your transformation from a commie-born young pioneer to the international man of mystery. And she started calling me after meeting that, spy family guy in Moscow, etc., questioning my connection and why I spoke Arabic, which he didn't know until I mentioned that Iraqi internship in Detroit episode in Rust Belt, rather. So anyway, he said, it should be like strictly Zamir. Don't try to tell more about us and the show together. It should be just your own memoir book. And that's how it started until he took off. Then I realized that it would be much more easier for me not just to present it as Zamir's memoir, like, who is Zamir? Let's be realistic. I'm not, Yeltsin, I'm not Putin, I'm not Gorbachev, but in a way how these 2 strange guys, Tony and Zamir, met in life, like basically how we started, how they influenced each other, what was the core of their friendship. And so basically it's a combination of my flashbacks on the show episode and my life independently as a film producer, as a filmmaker, as a vodka maker, as a peacemaker, basically. So I hope it won't be a boring read once my book agent, as we speak, is trying to get the right publisher for the book. In the worst case scenario, thanks to our friend Rodney, as you rightly mentioned, he is now explaining me how he did his self-published book. So probably as backup plan, I would have to do it. But we'll see, and hopefully we'll know more in June. And that's why I'm very optimistic that by the time your show will be up, maybe The Fixer and The Chef, the book will be already sold to ex-publisher, and then we will know when the publication day will happen.
I love it. I love it.
Meet again for that reason.
And even if it isn't, folks, you're going to hear about it here. You're going to hear more about it here. And trust me, like when the Coarse Grind Podcast makes a friend, the Coarse Grind Podcast keeps a friend. So we've got your back 24/7. We will promote the living shit out of it. Speaking of June, though, you have an event coming up on June 15th in Stockton, New Jersey, correct?
Yeah, actually, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop and what these events are all about. Basically 6 years since Tony is gone, and I'm not sure whether you know or not, we lost my son to suicide. He was a 20-year-old man 2 years ago. This first love affair didn't end up in a kind of happy way. So anyway, I'm kind of stuck with Tony's legacy in many ways, which is hard to explain, right? So in 2018, just 3 months after he gone, and I was in Buffalo, New York, as you understand, my basically second hometown now in the U.S. And a friend of mine, I didn't really know him well, a local filmmaker, Steve Powell, approached me and said, Zamir, it was during one of the events as a charity for suicide prevention and to give Tony's, legacy as much as we could. He said, how about a documentary we could probably create, like tentatively called Zamir Discovers Bourdain's America. Sort of Zamir continues the show, as you rightly mentioned, bringing the torch of Tony's light and goodwill and kind of all proletariat unites sort of through food and booze and interesting conversations. And I said, well, that's brilliant. So 2 guys without real money in our hand, just with amazing emotional thing and flair of Tony's, decided to do it self-funded. So it took us about 4 years. So luckily, last year, this film was finally produced, and thanks to some of our friends and fans of the show, they contributed to GoFundMe as the last post-production shootout we had to do. So the film was called 98 West, 98 degrees west. This is like a geographical point of Buffalo, so to say. And Zamir discovers Bourdain's America. It ended up as a 60-minute. We got several film festival prizes, and now trying to find a distributor, or like maybe with your audience, if you find a film broker who would help us to get to the online platforms, that would be easy. Otherwise, it's hard, to be on your own. So we're trying, and hopefully later this year we'll have official screenings in different parts of U.S., helping people to better understand what legacy Tony's left. Why so many people? I'm a member of 4 fan groups of Tony in social media. The legend, Anthony Bourdain rocks, the friends of Anthony Bourdain, and many of them. Believe me or not, it's like probably total amount of members, like 500,000. And it's all over the world. And every day, people send pictures they find, some new stories they find about Tony's and different shows, their favorite shows, every day. Now, as you understand, 6 years since he's gone, people are involved in discussing why they loved him so much, how he made an impact on their life, on their career, etc. I'm sure you're not an exception.
No, I'm far from it. And as I know we've discussed, I've connected other dots from the Kitchen Confidential days, Beth Aretsky, Girl Bitch, because my wife's sorority sister was her neighbor in Manhattan, and so we connected the dots. And I actually have to tell you this because I think you'll appreciate this. I know that the art piece was drawn on a cocktail napkin by Beth one late night, where it's the skull head with the toque and the knife in its teeth. And I'll never forget, I asked her before I got it on my shoulder, I said, Beth, can I have your blessing to get this on my shoulder? And she said, I shit you not, she said, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. Yes, you can, and you're the first in the world to get my permission.
She was your midwife.
I'm saying, so and it's so crazy because I think it's really easy for, again, it's a huge fan base, and so many quote celebrities will pass and will fade. I feel like Tony has only gotten more vibrant.
That's amazing. It's like the cult.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I hate to call it that because cults kind of get a bad rap, but it kind of is. And so your work that you're doing, Zamir, both, I mean, with the vodka, with the tour, with the documentary, with the book, like, this is all toasting, whether it be literally or figuratively.
Exactly.
You're toasting his memory on a regular basis. And at the same time, and this is what I love the fact that we're talking, and I know, like, I say this on air, and folks, if you think I'm full of shit, I don't care. Stop listening. I don't care. But when I connect with somebody and I feel a new friend form, like you said, Zamir, later in life, it gets harder to form new friends. This is how friendships start. And it's over a common interest, and our interest just happens to be an amazing human being. So, God, it's amazing to hear everything that's going on in the documentary. And folks, I know there's a couple filmmakers in and amongst the listener base. So if you're listening and you want to pick this up, message me. However you want to get to me. Some of you have my cell, some of you don't, with good reason, I'm sure. So just reach out and let me know.
Well, thank you for exposure, because I really feel, though I'm 67 and kind of losing steam a little bit, that kind of show he wanted me to be a part of. I think I sent you the trailer, tentatively called Comrades. That was again in that time when he, mentioned that I should start with my own book writing. He said, Zamir, Comrades will give you quite a better understanding what it is to visit quintessential American lifestyle, like Renaissance fairs, different kind of foodies, clubs, and folk and the tailgate parties kind of thing, more like informal than formal, to better understand that mentality. So that was his original plan, to have me in the field and with Nari, the associate of Tony from 0.0 at that time.
I remember
so the two of us would travel around U.S. and he would produce and narrate that show. Sadly for me, the Travel Channel, whom he pitched that whole idea, approved it. But same year, Tony started to divorce them and ultimately left for CNN 2012. So that whole story idea and show idea is still at the back burner. So I do believe it could be an amazing web series or something, just me going to, like, I don't know, Utah, you name it, South Dakota. Believe it or not, why I'm so excited still about it. My first trip to the U.S. in 1990, I took a Greyhound bus from Port Authority terminal in New York City for Seattle, Washington. Give me a wide guess. How much time did it take me to get from New York City to Seattle, Washington?
Oh my God! What, 2 days?
3.
3? Okay.
Yeah, that story deserves a separate chapter. But anyway, I did realize, to cut the long story short, that New York is not America, and definitely the real America is much further away from New York City.
And I'll tell you,
like in Moscow. Moscow is not Russia. So
no, exactly.
Like Italy or Europe. But once you get like even 200 miles away, you will understand the real mainstream Russian mindset, which is so different. That's what I tried to show Tony in the second Russian episode. Yes. We went to that old city of Vladimir.
I remember.
I'm sorry. Back to you.
No.
June is considered Bourdain's month. 2 reasons.
Yes.
Symbolically, sadly, it's a 6th anniversary of his death, June 8th, and
his birthday, June 25th.
The 68th anniversary of his birthday on June 25th. So in June, I'm doing that happy hour meet and greet, different format events, starting on Saturday, June 15th at Stockton. Amazing new place, venue. Owned by amazing chef Todd. He's a musician, like most of the chefs, part of the music world. That's what Tony really, wanted and was a microcosm for me himself. It's Starving Artists Cafe. It's 5 to 8 p.m. Saturday, June 15th. If your readers are interested, then follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or we'll visit www.Zamir Gotta, Gotta, gotta be free.com. There'll be the detailed, I would say, itinerary and information on all events. Then it will be Buffalo, New York, June 20th. The details will be on my website. And then it will be Toledo, Ohio, June 23rd, Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m. And hopefully the real birthday on the 25th will be celebrated in Detroit with the local friends and hospitality community.
Love it. Love every single bit of that. And again, I think the analogy that I made before about you toasting him, both figuratively and literally, is so absolutely killer. I don't know if you ever wonder if you're doing him right, if you're doing his memory right, but man, I'm here to tell you, you are, hands down. I believe that fully.
Thank you.
Couple last questions, a little bit of the afters, a little bit more fun, lighten the room up just a little bit. Zamir, let's say this. You and I are throwing a dinner party, and we're cooking together in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And you have control of the radio or of the playlist. What are we listening to, you and me?
Stevie Ray Vaughan would be probably number one. That's the type of music Tony brought into my life. I didn't know anything about Stevie Ray Vaughan. Then it would be Led Zeppelin, my favorite, and especially in the light of the tribute. I wasn't there physically, but that Stairway to Heaven song,
absolutely,
presented by Heart, that's still my basically every night tune before I go to bed.
Absolutely. And
that would be probably more of my Deep Purple hard rock kind of youth time fascination, which was eye opener to me, both learning English, as I mentioned, with the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yep.
So I'm kind of an old school. I love that life. I love that time. I always go back with my memories, and that music helped me a lot.
Absolutely. Solid playlist, by the way. You and I would get along just fine in the kitchen, I'll be honest.
Perfect.
Good to go. So here's the next question for you. This one's tough. Fictitiously speaking, We're going to strand you on a deserted island. We're going to send you to an island, and you can only bring 3 foods, drinks, or food-type items with you. Limitless supply. If you name it, you get it for life. But you can only bring 3 things. What are they?
Perfect. Do you remember I mentioned bologna, that sausage
Yep.
from my childhood, which was not enough?
Why did I know that was going to make the list?
To make our life easy with the sandwiches, and they go well with vodka, by the way. And just it's important for you to understand that I'm not really pitching Zamir vodka, as you remember I tried to explain to you. But for me, it's a conversation starter.
Conversation starter. I love it.
Islanders on that island sooner or later will need to start a conversation. That's what I would ask them to have a shot with me, but we don't drink without food. So food is important. And then you're going to love that. It would be definitely a pizza. I love pepperoni, so my favorite. So if there is a chance to bring it to that island,
Absolutely.
That would be. And it would be pasta carbonara.
Oh.
That's the only thing I could actually do myself.
And honestly, we're going to comp you the vodka. We're going to say, if Zamir goes to a deserted island, he gets the vodka for free. So that's just going with you regardless.
I'm in. Count me in. Just send me a helicopter, like Air Force One.
Airdrop. Airdropped vodka. I love it. So the inspiration for the show, and I know listeners, it's been a hot second, so you might have even forgotten, comes from Melanie Danea, My Last Supper and the Next Course, picture book. It's the one where she took the picture of Tony with the beef femur hanging between his legs. She was the photographer that did that. And in the book, she would ask every chef the same questions, and they were all centered around, your ticket's getting punched tomorrow. You're going to meet your maker. What is your last meal? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What music is playing? Who's there? So I ask you, Zamir, what would that be for you?
You know what? I don't want to sound over dramatic, but I think 4 years ago, I'm not sure you watched that. You should if you missed that. The Roadrunner, the documentary, the film about Tony was just released, and at believe it or not, at New York City at the Les Halles restaurant, which was closed, but it was open just for 2 nights to accommodate, Tony's ZPZ company crew, friends, and kind of family members for 2 nights only, and they reproduced that Tony's menu. So believe me or not, I will have to repeat that because I enjoyed it. It was very good way to remember him and to give him tribute as well. So it was onion soup. It was the French word is not something I would always meat beef bourguignon.
Beef bourguignon.
Burgundy meat, yes, this kind of like a steak from Burgundy meat, and the chocolate mousse was the dessert.
Love it. I love it. And what a fitting testament to the memory as well. And Zamir, the last question that I have for you, it's the simplest and probably the most complicated, maybe, who knows. What is food to you in a single word?
Food to me, metaphorically, is food for thought. That explains why, something which I missed to mention, and that will be a good way to explore it. Thanks to Tony, he taught me and many of his fans that through food we learn about different cultures, different languages, different way of life. But at the end of the day, we do understand again and again that we are all human beings. We are the same. We're in the same boat. We basically have same food stuff, but produced with different recipes. Same with the booze, by the way. So that's the way for me to learn. So for the last 2 years, I thought, how do I help people who watched his show, who loved that, but to experience it when he's gone? And it wasn't that complicated to come up with Gotta travel. So I bring those committed, diehard fans to the countries where I was taking him around. So we started with Uzbekistan, Armenia, Georgia, former Soviet Union countries. Sadly, Russia and Ukraine are not available. And God bless us all, the war should be over much sooner than the fucking politicians can afford making a deal. But that's what I always wanted and still bring it to the people's attention. And you don't have to speak the language. You don't have to drink their booze. But once you come to the people's home and eat with them the food, it could be very symbolic. It doesn't matter exactly what you eat, but, done with their own hands, from their own heart. Even if they eat with the hands, you have to follow and learn that technique. Only then we could understand each other much better than politicians trying to help us, being diplomats. So I believe in shuttle diplomacy, when people meet each other face to face and start a conversation. That's where the toasts help. So now you better understand that I'm on a mission. Like Mahatma Gandhi, I'm trying to bring peace through food and booze and make people friends.
I can only tell you have certainly brought peace and a friendship through me, sir, and it is an absolute fucking honor to know you.
Sean, but now you cannot say, Zamir, I fucked up. If within a month I don't hear from you and this show as a return of the prodigal, like Sean is back, is not available, you will be fired.
All right, and listen, I've taken terminations before. I'd be honored to be terminated by you, sir.
Okay. So no abortions, let's do it.
That's right. All right, listen up, folks. We got the plug list coming up here. Check it out, ZamirGotta.com, ZamirGotta.com. Check it out for all things Zamir, including the Meet and Greet series, the documentary, the Fixer and the Chef book, as well as the Peacemaker vodka. Remember, that next step event is coming up on June 15th, Saturday, at the Starving Artist Cafe, Stockton, New Jersey, 609-483-2219 for tickets. And I think that pretty much does the list. Did I miss anything, sir?
Sean, you did, and that's my fault. I think there was too many other things I wanted to bring up. So Olympic Games, if you remember,
yes,
the torch of light is brought from different continents to upkeep that light as the symbol of life, right?
Yes.
So luckily for you, that's the timely return in June and July. The next Summer Olympics will start in Paris, France. So try to be part of that, bringing the audience together.
I love it.
The people who understand that we're all the same and we just need to be more open-minded and, meet new people, start a conversation, whether it's in the bar or at the tailgate party, it doesn't matter. So that's what Tony and Zamir want to bring into your show.
I love it. And that's what's happening. We're going international, baby, and we're going to bring everybody together. We're going to be the grand unifier. Oh, man. Zamir, I cannot thank you enough, sir. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Listen, we deliver the goods. So now you are impregnated. So tell your wife, now you have a new status.
I do.
Right?
I do. I've got to do. I love it. I love it, brother. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 204 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With us this evening, the illustrious, inimitable Zamir Gotta. Our producer, as always this evening, has been Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out all his goings-on in the 18431. And our next episode, I'm not sure what it will be yet, but I guarantee you it won't be as damn long this time. Stay tuned. Keep listening.
Good luck.
Are you passing through central Pennsylvania and looking for one of the best dining experiences and craft brew menus around? Look no further. Turkey Hill Brewing Company and 991 Central Road in Bloomsburg, PA has everything you could ask for and then some. Service, food, beer together. Unbelievable. Be sure to check them out. Call them today for reservations. 570-387-8422. Call today.